All right, today you have the Japan lecture for your e-learning assignment on December 11th. A good place to start is where in the world is Japan? Japan is here, east of China, the area that we've been talking about recently. Japan is located on an archipelago, which I think is a pretty fun word. And what it means is a chain of islands. And it's about 100 miles off the Asia mainland. So you can see here the different islands that consist of Japan and its close-ish proximity to China. Japan felt a powerful influence of Chinese civilization early in its history. However, the Japanese continued to maintain a distinct culture of their own. The surrounding seas around Japan have served multiple different purposes. One, protecting Japan, and two, isolating Japan. They could still learn from surrounding areas like Korea and China, but still be isolated, and they'll find this to be a positive thing when the Mongols are expanding their empire. It's actually the sea and the weather of the sea that disrupts the Mongols from taking Japan. Japan lies in a region known as the Ring of Fire. You might have heard the Johnny Cash song Ring of Fire. That's all I've been thinking about since I've written that. What the Ring of Fire is, it's a chain of volcanoes that encircles the Pacific Ocean. I'll show you a picture of a map of where the Ring of Fire exactly is. So these are underwater volcanoes, and these volcanoes can cause underwater earthquakes that can launch large tidal waves, that are called tsunamis. So here's the Ring of Fire. All right, so if you follow with me, right here is like California, the West Coast. You go around, you're looking at like a backwards map. Here's Japan, and you can see that the islands are just right in that Ring of Fire. So they experience tsunamis, just huge tidal waves because of those underwater earthquakes. Early Japan, the Japanese probably migrated from Asia mainland more than 2,000 years ago. In the 600s, Prince Shakotu of the Yamato clan wanted to learn more about China, and he sent young nobles to study in China. So he would send people, they would go for a year or longer, learning about Chinese culture and just the way that they did things as far as government. And when they returned, they spread this Chinese thought, spread what they learned about technology and art throughout Japan. Because of this, you see a lot of similarities in the government and foods they eat, fashion, dishes, pottery, music, dances. However, there's this term called selective borrowing. If you don't even kind of think of it in terms of Japan, you could probably come up with a conclusion of what that means. So, in time, the initial enthusiasm of everything Chinese died down in Japan, that should say Japanese. Cover that Chinese and put Japanese. The Japanese kept some Chinese ways, but discarded or modified others. So an example of this, again, it's called selective borrowing, is that the Japanese never accepted the Chinese civil service exam that we studied when we talked about China. Instead, for their government, they inherited government status through family position. So while they might have taken other things from China, they kind of picked and chose what they took. Japanese also had feudalism, like we studied with Europe, and warriors established this feudalism. Feudal warfare swept Japan in the 1400s. This order continued through the following century. Despite the turmoil, a new Japanese culture arose. We see rival clans in China battle against other clans for control of the countryside. Local warlords would form armed bands loyal to them, rather than the central government. So through this fighting, Japan evolved into a feudal system. So in theory, there was an emperor of Japan, and he stood at the head of the Japanese feudal society. But kind of more in practice, he was powerless. Though revered, so respected, he was just kind of the symbol of power. Where the real power laid was in the hands of the shogun. And what shogun means, it's the supreme military commander. So under the emperor, who again doesn't really have power, we find the shogun. The shogun controlled only a small part of Japan. He distributed lands to vassal lords who agreed to support him with armies, with the military support in time of need. So hopefully this sounds familiar to when we talked about feudalism in Europe. Under the shogun, we have the daimyo. And these were essentially, you can think, vassals. They were given land, great warrior lords. And then they gave land to the lesser warriors called the samurai. So they had larger land, but the samurai you can equate to like your knights, similar to medieval Europe's knights, and samurai meaning those who serve. The samurai developed their own code of values. This code of values was called Bushido, which is the way of the warrior. They emphasized honor, bravery, and absolute loyalty to one's lord. Here is a pyramid of Japan's feudal structure to stick in your noggin. Obviously, emperor up top and work your way down. What we just talked about, the peasants are at the bottom, and below them we have artisans and merchants, which is also similar to China. Right, how I said that was interesting. And even still now, or not still now, just like China, this is where the largest majority of your people are. I would say, or books will say, about 75% of the people were peasants. All right, that is it for the Japan lecture. Keep an eye on Canvas. Make sure that you get all of your assignments turned in and email me with any questions.